Welcome to the Arcology, a Shadowcasters Network show about all things Shadowrun. I'm Mr. Johnson, and today we'll be talking about something Shadowrun adjacent, Team Rex's Vault RPG. Now for the news. Subversion, the Kickstarter for Subversion goes live this week, starting Tuesday, February 21st. It seems February is the month for cyberpunk fantasy tabletop RPGs on Kickstarter, and very much looking forward to this. I've had my hand in the development of this RPG, and it's been a long time in coming, so it's very exciting. It's a Babylonian-inspired cyberpunk fantasy RPG, and we're doing a day of streaming here on the Shadowcasters Network YouTube channel, going live at about noon Eastern Time. So go ahead and follow the Kickstarter campaign so you don't miss out on the early bird options, and I hope to see you on the stream. The link is kickstarter.com/projects/fraggingunicorns/subversion, or just search Subversion Kickstarter and that'll take you to it more easily. In other news, Legends of Earth Dawn has returned. As I promised, we're dropping new episodes of the Legends of Earth Dawn podcast that are being released weekly on Tuesdays. And it's a big time for the story because we have a major multi-session boss battle against the Horror Zorg, which has begun. And it's probably going to take quite a few episodes because boss battles against horrors in Earth Dawn, they take a while unless you die quickly, which is always a possibility. And that's it for the news. Don't have a lot of other news to report. Let's move on to our main topic for today. Vault. The Vault RPG from TMX Games, which is live on Kickstarter now, and very, very close to funding. So go ahead and I'll ask my tech here to bring our guests up on the screen. I'm joined by several members of TMX Games. Richard, the creative director, Zach, the co-monster designer and lore writer, and Eric, who couldn't settle on a title because he's a wearer of many hats. Went with the title of partner. So let's see here. Is tech working for us? Do we have you on the screen here? Hey, there you are. Welcome to the Arcology.
Hello.
I went through the name intros pretty quickly. Why don't we go through one at a time and you just talk a little bit about yourself? We'll start with Richard.
Sure.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm Richard Davis. We started the company in earnest about 3 years ago. I started working on the game maybe about 7 years before that. And we've been really trying to put things together in a way that's gonna make sense and be fun for people. I guess maybe some of the bigger things on the philosophy behind the company itself are we're really, really into hearing honest, constructive criticism from people. We get a decent number of compliments for how things are working out so far, and we love those comments, but we really, really cherish the ones that are like, I think you could do this a little bit better. So we really try and hear as much of that as we possibly can.
Yeah, praise is nice, but criticism is more useful.
Golden. Eric, maybe?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Eric, and I'm a partner at TMX Games. I do some graphic design, I do some rules design, I do some editing. I wear, like I said, or Mr. Johnson said, wear many hats, and I have my finger in many of the pies.
And I'm Zach. I am one of the lead monster designers. So I'm the one who puts all the bad guys on the table for you, or at least I help. And then I also assist with the lore writing. Writing is a big passion of mine, so I really like creating these stories that are intricate and actually have some interesting little Easter eggs hidden within them. So I'm excited for the community to find it and kind of pick it apart a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you all here. Thanks so much for joining me. When I saw the links go out for Vault, I looked into it, and I thought it looked like it would be a lot of fun. Download the demo you have posted, the Kill Bob mission with
and
some of the basic starter rules, and since then you've given me a look under the hood at the rules in progress, and yeah, I really I'm looking forward to digging into that. So why don't we start on that just with what is Vault?
We are a Sci-fi fantasy, near future cyberpunk role-playing game. The kind of foundational myth of our setting was Fae existed on our planet, mostly kind of terrorizing humanity, all the way up until the point at which humanity developed iron weapons. Once that happened, we were able to kill Fae very, very effectively, and they all just got the hell out of here, escaped to other realms of existence, other places, anywhere not here. And then as technology developed for humanity, we went further and further away from using iron in the things that we actually use to kill people with. A lot of plastics, a lot of lead, a lot of those kinds of things, which the Fae are a whole lot less bothered by. So they eventually come back in this big cataclysmic magic event that has really serious ramifications on the world, but also humanity is mostly pushed into big mega cities just from how badly we fare from magic flooding back into the world from this, and just the horrible, horrible things that had happened to the Faes, warping them in different ways while they were stuck in these other planes of existence waiting for a chance to come back. And then the storyline advances a bit. Eventually, there's some small issues with AI just wanting to delete everything that's biological on the planet.
Yes, very small.
Little bit of forcing the Fae and humanity to kind of work together a little bit, which is how you get some of the Fae species worked into the playable characters. Building some more uneasy alliances there. And then to deal with that, we do engineered organic soldiers. We call them EOS to help combat that. That also doesn't go terribly well. They eventually figure out how to build up their own freedom, and now they're also a playable species that's in our system. And that's pretty much about where the timeline is when players start picking up. Vault itself, the name, is an Uber-like app that mercenaries take their missions off of in like a gig work style system. So that's maybe a relatively brief description.
Yeah, coming from the chat, we have Opti here from Fragging Unicorns Games saying, well, first of all, complimented your graphic design, saying that's on point. We got to agree with that. The graphic design looks beautiful on this. Also just saying that this is some tight lore. I can see lots of cool story hooks coming from that. Love the idea that outside cities there is just danger. So,
yeah, between the AI and the Fae and the natural world and whatever else is happening, a lot of flooding. Yeah, very, very difficult place to be if you're not in a city.
Cities aren't so easy to be in either, but yeah.
So, I guess when talking about any cyberpunk fantasy RPG, there's the sort of elephant in the room of Shadowrun. We're a Shadowrun podcast as well, so don't want to spend too much time comparing, but I just thought I'd bring up the question to you of what will Shadowrun players find familiar or similar to Shadowrun, or what would bring them to join based on their level of Shadowrun?
Yeah, we obviously love the theme of Shadowrun. I think a lot of people who have played Shadowrun for a really long time have all had that experience of having a harder time getting the rest of their game group to be willing to dig in and learn the system and really fully jump into playing Shadowrun. So one of the biggest things we really wanted to do was keep a lot of those themes feeling very familiar and make the mechanics digestible, visual, visceral, and really kind of help players jump into it so that you can get some of those more topical stories that you get to do with Shadowrun that in a pure fantasy are a lot harder to make happen. So a lot of those themes will be the same. Eric, do you want to talk a little bit about the class similarities and kind of how those archetypes kind of all line up in the way our system works there?
Yeah, and I have some limited Shadowrun experience myself, but we have some similar classes because there's roles on a team that you need filled in your cyber fantasy world. We've got mages and ascendant, folks that manipulate their magic into their bodies to do combat well and physical actions. We've got your Ripper, we call them info rippers, but hacker folks. We've got drone operators that run those things. One of the other big similarities is we love the tie-in of, metal in your body, bad for doing magic. So there is a crossover there of like, can't have a robo arm and do spells very good. So we've embraced that one because we think that's an excellent balance point at the very least, if not a very cool lore explanation for all that. And the other one that is losing it. Is the idea of characters that want to forego both things, and skip out on the cyberware or the magic, and give them a reason to do them.
Nice. So, in the RPG of Vault, who are the player characters? What sort of people are they? What are they doing?
Zach, why don't you take this one?
Yeah. So as far as the player characters, they are at least starting out called mercenaries. As you kind of build up esteem through the actual Vault app, there are ways for you to gain new titles to show that you're not just some dude off the street who managed to find a pistol and a phone. So the players play mercenaries. They have access to a lot of different systems that help really attach them to the universe that our world shapers create. And that's a lot of stuff we can get into a little bit. It's much more in depth than just right off the hop. But yeah, players, they're playing mercenaries, kind of similar to runners in Shadowrun, if I'm familiar with that system as much as I think I am.
So are the mercenaries sort of a legal distinction? Are they somewhat above board, or are they more of a criminal underbelly?
I was going to say, Richard, if you want to take that, feel free.
Yeah, Richard's got the nail on
Yeah, it is.
So in our setting, voting is being employed by a megacorp. The way that it gets figured out who's actually in charge of a city is which megacorps have the most voters, which is employees. So the people who are working off of this Vault app are checked out of that system. It's kind of a different way of coming at it from like the sinless system in Shadowrun, where like I'm not so sure that I'm so concerned with like there being a social security number attached to your persona so much as we're really just trying to emphasize on the how the title of being employed by a megacorp will affect you in society. And then as far as like the legal aspects of Vault, we decided that it would be really fun to make the legality attached to what you're doing be mostly suspended while you're on the mission. And once the mission is complete, anything that was happening is kind of wiped away, as long as it was like related to actually doing the mission. People may still have real problems with the things that you've done, but they won't necessarily be able to call city security and be like, arrest that man, he murdered my brother. So we're trying to create a controlled, lawless environment for the missions that you're actually doing.
So who does the hiring on the Vault app? Who are the clients?
Anybody can put a job in. As far as what's likely to actually get recognized, picked up, and then promoted, it's, quotation marks, the algorithm. So we're hoping that we can do a whole lot of intrigue and plot hooking that you can do with that, where you might not necessarily know who's put the mission in. It might look like it had come from someone, but it'll actually come from an entirely different place. And as you're working out the mission, you'll be able to figure that out.
Yeah, that's really
we call them Patreons. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. What did you say?
Just the role, the title of anyone that is sponsors a Vault app job. We call it patron. Just another little small difference there, because heck, why not add more stuff about ops and gig work, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Sort of bringing in the sort of gig hiring of mercenaries under this sort of social media style app with all of the pitfalls and dystopian elements that brings. That's a really cool idea.
Thank you.
Also, I think it would sort of make it fun and easy for players to just sort of jump into a job. You have this really nice, easy built-in mechanic or lore mechanic, basically for getting the adventure started. So, do you picture in a campaign the players will have the option to sort of pull up a list of potential jobs, and the GM will play off of that, or do you picture the GM sort of bringing forth, here's what you see on the vault, and this is the adventure we're playing today?
We're hoping to make the mission planning and setup process easy enough to where it's not actually onerous for a game master to have 3 to 5 missions all prepped and ready to go, and then let the players kind of pick what direction they want to go in. And then a lot of the GM section is talking about ways to like build off of the plot hooks that you might be leaving hang there to start turning that episodic gameplay loop into a full-fledged story. So that you might, run into somebody who happens to have a key card that will be really useful in a future mission. Or you might notice that some of the people that you were there to kill were already dead, but there's a calling card left behind that might actually cue you into the next mission. Like some word that was on that might be on another mission going forward, and you might start following that rabbit to see where whoever this person is that keeps using that kind of a term in their mission briefings, where does that actually go? So we have like a bunch of ideas for like how to turn that almost monster of the week B-plot episodic TV show storyline into more of a premium story television style presentation. But we've also found that a lot of people nowadays have like 4 hours to play. And sometimes it's nice if you can make that like an encapsulated thing that builds into the next thing. So we're trying to split the difference and give as many options as possible for that.
The other fun thing that we've thrown in is really thorough downtime system. So when you're done with those missions, when you've played through them, you get your reward and go home, and there is a plethora of things for your character to do, and you get kind of a slice of life, day to day, being this person, and what kind of things you want to spend your time on. Training so that you're stronger for your next mission. Getting something commissioned or built so that you can have the coolest next piece of tech or a new drone to help you out. Or just fixing those injuries because the big AI monstrosity punched you in the head real hard. Now you have a concussion.
Cool. If you don't mind, let's dig into some of the game mechanics we've been sort of touching on here. I guess what's the basic game mechanic for resolving tests?
2d6. Pretty much everything is 2d6. You on occasion, depending on how you build your character, will have some opportunities to like surge and hone, where you'll add an extra die 6, or you'll add an extra die 6 and drop the lowest. But mostly everything, whether it's an attack roll, a damage roll, a skill roll, it's roll 2d6, add a number, get a number. The big mechanical thing that we're trying to do is create a lot of agency in the combat and make it resolve very quickly. So like dodging, everyone here is going to be very familiar with, is a set number of uses you have every turn, and you have just 2 different defensive profiles. You have your regular defensive profile and your dodging defensive profile. So the game master will ask you, would you like to dodge this attack? And then you'll say, no, my defense is 14, or yes, my defense is 17. And then that is the entire dodge action done without rolling any extra dice or doing anything. But you only have so many of them per turn, so you're really needing to pay attention to the combat to figure out, like, well, that real big attack over there, I really want to make sure I have something left over for that. And all these little guys who might just attack me anyways, like, that's not actually my priority. And then we use a flat armor value system, so you'll roll 2d6, add your damage profile from your weapon or your attack to that, and then that flat damage value will cut that off, and then whatever's left over is how much damage you actually take.
Okay. What's the action economy like?
Snap action, combat action, move action. with some opportunities through magic and cyberware and some other things to gain additional of those actions as a whole, like type. So you might have 2 snap actions, or you might have an extra snap action purely for the purposes of casting spells, that kind of thing.
Cool. How does spellcasting work in this game?
You want to get that one, Zach?
Yeah, so spellcasting, the biggest thing we wanted to go for was actually make the system simple. I'm far more familiar with D&D systems, games like that, so the 4.5 paragraphs to read to figure out what a spell does, we tried to limit that as much as possible. So each spellcaster with their snap action can cast a spell. They gain resources called magic points, similar to dodges that refresh at the start of their turn. And they can spend those however they want. So we have spells that are upkeep spells that you can keep maintaining throughout combat, or you can have your one-off spells like lightning bolts and fireballs, everybody's favorite. And you can use those extra magic points to do extra things. Some of them are damage reactions, or like Richard was saying with surging, you can add extra dice to your damage on your spells or to hit with your spells. So we tried to make the system quick, easy, and simple, and make it so that mages aren't spending their entire turns casting spells. They still have the opportunity to shoot at stuff or hit stuff with sticks, just because that's been kind of a thing mages really don't do in a lot of other systems. They just do magic, and that is purely it. So we wanted to give that opportunity for players. That too.
Bravely run away.
Exactly.
I noticed when I was reading things over, you got essentially this hit point resource for how much damage you can take, but it's sort of interesting way of approaching losing hit points and taking injuries, where once you run out of hit points, that doesn't mean you're out of the fight. It means you may suffer injuries, and this is sort of you get to keep going from that point. And it seems like you have this sort of option to either sort of stay in the fight and accrue more injuries that may be harder to shrug off or deal with it in the future, or maybe take the hint and back off and let some of your friends step in and deal with some of the threats. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the hit point injury mechanic works?
Yeah, I'll steal that one. So everyone has a pool of hit points. You can increase that as your character levels up, and you take abilities and gain XP. And that hit point pool can go up, but it's always kind of a choice between hit points or something else. So there's kind of a balance to hit there. Once you're below 5 hit points on characters, our current mechanic is that you are broken. So you lose one of those actions on your turn. So you're really beat up. It's kind of the red flag of like, hey, now's the time to get some healing going, or get your mage buddy to help you out or something like that. But once you are below 0 hit points, and every 5 hit points below that number that you would take. So if you were at, and Richard, correct me if my math's wrong here, but if you were at no hit points, because you never go into negatives in our game, and take another big hit and lost and took 11 damage, you would take 3 injuries, right?
That is correct.
You would take 3 injuries, and they increase in severity. They add on top of each other. They're counted up by injury counters, and they make it, our table get more and more severe, all the way up to, you permanently lose HP points and will eventually just be dead. But the injuries are all kinds of things, from like, oh, my arm is broken, it's harder to use my two-handed weapon, to like, you got hit really hard in the head and, have to worry about being unconscious for a turn, or or I'm bleeding out, and every turn I'm going to keep bleeding out until someone does enough healing to get me kind of like in a stabilized place. And all of those injuries, or at least almost all of them, have a persistent effect that carries over into downtime or your next missions. So it's really important to spend the funds, have the doctor in the party work on you, do something to mitigate some of those before you go on your next job, because they could be the difference between surviving that next job or not surviving. So
that sounds really fun and interesting, rather than just being X amount of numbers of damage you've got. Now I've got a broken arm or some other condition to deal with.
And no, like, just taking a nap and being better tomorrow either.
One extra note there: a lot of the injuries will diminish you, but they'll still keep you participating in the game while you're really messed up. This also is a big design decision we made in terms of like mind control effects. We don't ever want to have someone just sit at the table and not be able to play if we can help it at all. Like there are some opportunities to get knocked out, and like that was just necessary, and obviously there's plenty of ways to die. But if you get mind controlled, the effect of that is going to be immediately your character does something then, and then you'll still have your turn to try and do something with. I've definitely been the player at the table who's like, well, I failed this charm saving throw, so the GM is going to run my character for me, and I can go get dinner.
Shadowrun, the sort of big scary one on that, or that takes a lot of the fun out of the game for the players, is when you get hit with the fear power, because then you have to run away for a certain amount of time, and then you're away from the combat. Even when it wears off, you have to come back. And generally speaking, the way Shadowrun combats resolve, they usually don't last very many combat rounds. So,
right.
Basically means you're going to miss out on the action, which I don't know. I think I'd almost rather take a hit and end up bleeding out on the ground rather than get hit by a fear power and have to run away and miss out.
Yeah, so that was a big decision we made. The other one that came up here that I thought was worth mentioning as like a fundamental to our design philosophy was we don't affect base stats during gameplay ever. So like when Eric was mentioning like the injury counter, we'll also do poison and radiation and pathogens and all those kinds of things by adding counters onto the character rather than saying like, you lost 2 con. Now go search your character sheet for all the different places where that's going to have an effect. But like the poison will build up, and as it hits a threshold equal to your physical, for the case of like basic poison, a neurotoxin might use a different stat as its threshold. But every time you've built up enough poison counters to be equal to that number, then an effect happens. For like basic poison, it's take an injury. So you might still have all of your hit points, but you've gotten so poisoned from an effect that like that is going to be what kills you. And there's a bunch of different ways to like mitigate that and try to heal those off and deal with them. But we thought that adding counters to a character was just way better than letting like your strength diminish. And then you have to chase down your character sheet to figure out all the different places where that was going to have an effect.
Yeah, it's a really cool design choice. It seems like you're adding a lot of complexity in without making it more complex to deal with at the table.
That's the goal.
I look forward to, we're going to be actually playing the game with you GMing for myself and a few friends in a few days, and we'll be putting that up as an actual play on the Arcology podcast feed. It'll be an audio podcast, so I'm looking forward to actually getting the chance to play the game and try it out.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed about the game design, it was mentioned in a couple places, but also very much featured in the demo mission, Kill Bob, is that you've got sort of a unique set of mechanics for dealing with boss fights.
Eric, you were a big part of that design.
Yeah.
You want to?
Yeah, go ahead, Zach, and I'll fill in if I need to.
Sure. So one of the biggest things with our bosses, we didn't want them to feel like just a gigantic stack of hit points. We wanted them to actually feel like they were dynamic and had elements to them that you were able to do. So in Bob specifically, which you're going to be able to see here, there are different locations you're actually able to target on a boss that have different effects. So if you want to shoot out the legs of something or the wings, something like that, you're able to actually target different systems in order to take off different things from bad guys. Now, this is specific to our bosses. We have a couple designed already, Bob being one of the big ones, and kind of the one everybody knows. But these different systems have different effects, different weapons. That way, you're I believe the term everybody was using, kind of like Final Fantasy, where blowing armor off something or something.
If you don't
like
mind
that.
me cutting in, many of the people listening might not know who Bob is if they haven't checked out the document.
That is entirely fair. So
Bob,
Bob,
take a moment to introduce Bob. Who is Bob, and why do we want to kill him?
Oh, well, lots of reasons on that one. But Bob is an AI. He has been a thorn in Atlas, one of our mega corporation side, for a very long time. So he is an AI that has just consistently reconstructed himself, found a way to sneak around the internet and avoid the Ouroboros, which is our anti-AI AI of sorts, shackled AI. But Bob is in our demo. He's a big old robot with lots of big guns, and he's got a bit of a cult following, as you'd say. So,
what's an example of something you might target on Bob for certain effect?
One of the big ones I would always highly recommend is that rail rifle he has on there. It is a very big, very mean gun. So taking it out early in the combat is very, very good. It's a very wise decision.
But someone might instead want to go for the juggler and target a different component that might help take him out faster without necessarily reducing his components in the meantime.
Yeah, there's a few different systems. It depends on your method of attack, kind of going into, and we'll touch on it a little bit, the hacking system. But his core is a big one there, kind of hammering home. If you're just going the brute force route, go straight for the jugular. Don't worry about all the extra systems. And then if you're looking to hack your way in, there are systems in place for you to be able to take Bob out without beating him up too much. Death, a silent death, if you will.
And that's one of the things that's gone through all of the bosses is the ability to, make a plan as the team or as your character for what you'd be good at fighting off and attacking that zone. There's just all kinds of different zones on as options. So, if there's a part that's weak to spells, you can throw that, or weak to hacking, or, there's a weapon that'll really mess up your cool, dodgy teammate. You can go after the boss board plan however you want to in ways that, after running Bob for a long time, because it's our free, awesome demo, I put the link in the chat for anyone that wants to check it out themselves. But we haven't seen it replayed the same way, maybe, after 30 playthroughs, once maybe. So lots of variety and lots of cool ways to do it. Never having the same fight twice is neat.
And just to mention to a tech people here, I think it's possible that the link might need to be approved by the Shadowcasters network moderator system or whatever, because I don't see it popping up.
And one thing kind of on that front, Richard, I know this has been something you've been super passionate about, is the actual concept of the boss boards itself, with the information you're giving to the players as well as what the GM sees. I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit there.
Yeah, so one of the ways we do this is we'll actually use the boss boards as like a handout that'll go out to the players. So they'll actually get a chance to kind of look at the gorgeous art that has been commissioned or that game masters find when they make their own, and then relate the art that they're looking at to the stats. So one of the really cool things that this does is, like in Bob, he has this one arm, well, his arms, they're highly active and moving around and doing stuff. So the defense value on those is actually considerably higher than basically the rest of Bob. And that kind of helps turn some of that, the flavor of what we want people to be imagining how Bob is actually acting into game mechanics that people might notice. So like, oh, these arms are like really mobile and agile and like doing deft things, even though it's on this gigantic robot, is one of the things that we wanted to kind of be able to translate. And then when you look at like the legs, they're like big, heavy, armored things that don't really move that well. So like being able to describe it both in the art and in the game mechanics directly there in front of the player, I think kind of really helps define what it is that they're actually fighting.
Cool, yeah, and I see, besides the sort of boss handouts, you've got a lot of sort of focus in the Kickstarter talking about using cards with the game. The purpose for that is primarily sort of a quick reference thing, I take it, so you don't have to go flipping through the book as much.
Yeah, if you've run a game out of like a bestiary, oftentimes you'll want to like show the art for the thing that everyone is fighting. And all of your rules are kind of there squished on the page. So you're kind of trying to like cover up the name of the guy and put the book up and like show it around the table so that everyone can see a visual for what it is that they're fighting. And you don't want to give away too many of your secrets. Generally speaking, before we did development on this game, I never used a GM screen for any of my game mastering. I just didn't like putting that wall between me and my players. I felt like it like every single time I used one, like my players just talked a little bit less and they just heard me a little bit less, and like it just wasn't as good of a connection. So what we wanted to do was turn the GM screen into a device that would enhance the communication between the players and the game master. So all of our cards are on double-sided tarot cards with all of the art for the creature on one side and every rule you'll need for running it on the other side. And then there's these window slots so that when you slot the card into the GM screen, the art faces the players and all of the rules you need to run the monster are facing you. And we love it. It's definitely helped enhance the communication between the game master and the player, and then they just have this like constant visual for what it is that they're fighting. They don't even have to like remember it; they're looking at it while they're fighting it.
It's a really cool, very innovative design.
Thank you.
I've generally not been a fan of using the GM screen so much myself either, just to avoid that sort of separation aspect. That's what I do most of my playing online these days. But yeah, I think playing in person at a GM screen like that, which would sort of give that visual element to the players and have the quick reference for the rules for the GM on the other side, it sounds really useful.
And we're hoping to, as extra goals and stuff, potentially adding to the GM screen little static cards for the windows, so you can have everything preloaded and then do a big like reveal, and you don't have to like sit there and fuddle with it as you're like getting, everyone's actually in the middle of stuff. Again, trying to make it as like seamless for game masters, or as we're kind of calling them, world shapers, to have that encounter and not have to stop, open books, flip pages, pull out things. It's all like boom, and there's Bob and his mechanical enemies or his mechanical allies, and you're ready for this fight already. That kind of thing.
So notice you've got cards for enemies, but also spells. But then other maybe different encounter types or types of approaches you might do, like infiltration or chase or hacking. I'm particularly curious, how does hacking work in this RPG?
Yeah, I'm gonna steal this one. I know I've been talking too much already, but I'm gonna steal it anyways. We wanted hacking to be really available to the people who really enjoyed doing it, but we didn't like the idea that sometimes the hacker and the GM would go off and play their own little side session for 45 minutes and then come back and there would be, everyone's passed out on Doritos.
Yeah, the classic older edition Shadowrun. Time for the Decker to do his thing. Let everyone else go out for pizza.
So
been thankfully resolved in recent editions, but yeah, I definitely get where you're coming from there.
Yeah, so ours are a series of, there's on these same size tarot cards, and they're a series of somewhat intricate but fast to resolve logic puzzles. So you'll use your hacking skill against the encryption of whatever system it is you're trying to hack. You'll roll your 2d6. However far you go above that encryption is how much damage you'll do to that system. And you can just target any system you want. Where this gets interesting is that all these different cards will have different effects that the game master can arrange in different ways. So like a firewall might say everything adjacent to this card can't be hacked until the firewall is taken down. Or our violet ADM that you'll encounter in Bob says at the end of every hacking attempt, you'll take a D3 damage if the system still has hit points. And then there's a white ADM that will heal adjacent systems at the end of each one of your attempts. And then there's things that will try and upload viruses into you while you're doing it. And you'll start gaining informational poison counters while you're going about things. So there's all these different cards that are available that the World Shaper doesn't actually have to prepare. There's just for this type of system, you'll add this many cards and then arrange them however you want. So if someone wants to overload a toaster and make it explode, the World Shaper didn't have to prep that hack. It's just a thing that they can generate in about, 10 seconds. And then the hacker can resolve it in, I don't know, 2-3 minutes, or actually in combat as like part of its combat actions. Yeah, there's just a lot you can do with it the way it's set up that way.
And it keeps it from being just like, oh, well, my whole job as Hacker Man is to roll one roll and then be done with the whole thing. And then on the opposite end, not being a 20-minute puzzle, it's or the the thing that the hacker and the game master have to all sit down and walk out of the room for. Yeah, somewhere in the middle there on the simpler side.
Cool. It sounds like a fun hacking system to play. So let's go into character creation next, if you don't mind. You have a bit of a flow chart on the Kickstarter page. There's a few different unique elements here I wanted to talk about. You start by choosing a species. So you've got kind of a classic fantasy options of humans, elves, and dwarves. But then also these things called changelings and Feyborn, and then the Eos, which I think you mentioned before when you were talking about the setting a bit. Is there anything about the species you wanted to bring up?
I would absolutely love to talk a little bit about changelings, just because we haven't done a ton with them, and they're my personal favorite species to play in the game. They are the unfortunate remnants of the Fae that were never able to escape. So they have learned to adapt to humanity and be able to avoid a lot of the issues that come from that. So they're shapeshifters, more or less, is a good way to put it. Tricksy shapeshifters that absolutely adore to use a whole bunch of the other systems in the game against their opponents. And that kind of gets into a lot of the abilities and stuff. But they are very fun, a very fun species to play if you're the type of player who really likes to mess around and kind of adjust the way the fight works, especially if you really like infiltration too. They're phenomenal for that.
Yeah, and our species, they all kind of, we've very carefully set up how they work. They are species, they're independent of each other, and that they set your base stats. And they have kind of different levels of how far they can advance or where they start off on tracks. And as you level up, you get to increase those levels and change how good they are. And then there's always the handicap breakers of cyberware and magic that can influence things. Is there anything else you wanted to add on that one, Richard?
Particularly on changelings, just kind of the expanding a little bit on what Zach had said about the lore. They are the Fae who did not leave. They have a harder time connecting to cyberware and to magic because they've been poisoned by iron the entire time that the rest of the Fae were gone for. Feyborn are some of the early Fae that actually joined humanity's side during the Fae Tide, which is that big cataclysmic event. So they're just generally pretty well accepted amongst a lot of the human cultures as like the good ones. And dwarves are cosmic refugees whose realm was being ripped apart during the Fae Tide by some completely undisclosed. You'll definitely in the full game get to pick up some of the plot hooks left behind by these chess-oriented cosmic entities that will completely obliterate an entire realm of existence. But they are the fleeing dwarves from that realm that have made it here. They're also the ones who had the more advanced cybernetic technology, which kind of helps explain how our world advanced as quickly as it did, and why a lot of people don't necessarily trust the technology. Eos are those genetically created super soldier style species. The super cool thing with those is there's a million different abilities you can take to completely alter their purpose. So you can play one that is tailored to be aquatic, and then you can just breathe in any kind of water and you swim real well and you're a little bit slippery. And then there's like a shock trooper one that'll just make you really good at like getting into the meat of a fight real early on. And then you can be a unnaturally born leader where you're better at doing those kinds of things because you were made that way. Humans
Your lineage was, yeah.
Yeah. Humans are the run-of-the-mill kind of baseline how people should relate to the world in comparison to themselves kind of a deal. They can do a ton of different things. You can definitely play a human and be good at pretty much anything you want to do. Who do I leave? Elves. Elves are born of magical parents. They are all considered exceptionally gifted. We actually contacted a evolutionary professor that we know to make sure that they thought it was reasonable for it to technically be a recessant gene that used to exist when magic was here in the world. And then as magic has come back into the world, now those people can be born again as a gene that got turned on because magic is here as long as both of their parents were magical. So that part's super fun. Did I hit everybody?
Yep, got everyone.
Cool.
Yes, let's move on to, you've got so these two different additional levers for defining your character of style and then classes. And with the style, you got 4 main choices between Mystic, Slayer, Strategist, and Titan. And you pick one style that you stick with, and then after that, you choose 2 classes that you sort of get to mix and match those. How does that go about influencing your character choices? So I think we're used to in class-based RPGs just having like one class you pick from, and here you've got sort of these all these different possible combinations.
Yeah, so our classes kind of act as the knowledge groups and background of your character. So if you were a bodyguard, you have a contact of someone you maybe used to bodyguard for, and you have a heavy set of armor from doing your job, and a set of skills and weapon proficiencies based on that. If you also want to be a gearhead with that, where your hobby has been tuning up cars or drones or something, and you have a perchant for larger weaponry, cool, that's added in. And as your character advances, you do gain a couple more smaller abilities for your classes, but the main push of it, after they've kind of combined and been this mix of abilities and traits, is that your character is like advancing free of those classes. As a person, they are gaining more toughness or more insight or more skills, and they level up as you progress. And then some things don't quite work, like you can't be our, witch huntery paladin-y character and be someone who possesses the mystic style that would let you use magic. Those two are incongruous to each other, and they bounce off in how their mechanics would work. So there's a couple of things where you can't, but for the most part, you can pick just about anything and smash them together. Super spellcasting, be a shaman and a mage, be a drone operator and info ripper, and now you're the hacking master who can hack through your drones into the systems you're trying to target. Things like that.
Yeah, it sounds fun. I always like to making characters be able to sort of cover a couple different bases or see what different things I can combine. Seems pretty well designed for that. How do the styles come into it then?
Yeah, so as far as the styles are concerned, the way they work, you have your 4 different options, like you said, and you pick it out of character creation. So they are a list of additional, for lack of a better term, abilities you can pick up along the way as your character progresses in XP. So your Mystic, those are going to be your mages. A lot of those abilities are designed to help buffing up a lot of the stuff they do, whether it's learn a new spell or our Ascendant being able to do more cool things with the way they utilize the magic for the martial aspect of it. Our Slayer is going to be much more akin to kind of like your fighter style. A lot of people kind of remember that. Getting extra attacks, being way more efficient in combat, being able to move a lot quicker, move around combat, and kind of control that a little bit more. Our Strategist, think of them kind of like your classic leadership role of sorts. They're able to help their allies, whether it be move through combat without taking penalties or shooting into combat without having penalties. They do a lot of that kind of stuff, and they also allow the drones to pick up on some of those buffs that they normally wouldn't. And then our Titan, one of the fan favorites I know out there, those guys are going to be kind kind of like barbarians in the way they work. They're big, angry, and a lot of their abilities are specifically designed to make them hit way harder in combat. So they are the classic tank role of, I have my big stick, I'm going to hit it very hard. Now, the great thing we did, at least in my opinion, with a lot of these is they don't pigeonhole that character. So you can play a Titan and still have range attacks, and you can actually still be quite effective. I think Eric actually ran a character that was phenomenal. That was a dedicated range character. So it's just more additional flavor to add to characters at character creation so that you can kind of build those cool action heroes you've always wanted to.
Cool. After that, then you get your stats and skill points you get to assign. I'm assuming stats are sort of like your attributes, and skill points are things you learn. And these are all stuff that you add to your 2d6 rolls?
Yeah. All of the skills are set up to be attribute plus skill points. All of the attacks are set up to be attribute plus weapon rank. So all the formulas are pretty easy to work out. And everybody gets an extra 4 points and to assign both in skill points and in attributes. You get a ton of your starting skills based on those classes that you chose. One extra note on the classes and on the styles, there is actually a point pretty far down in the XP chart where you'll gain the opportunity to add either another style or another class to your character. So as you've been developing and doing these things, some of the combos can really start to develop. Like, you're like, man, I just really wish I could like take a hit just a little bit better than I can. Am I choosing whether or not I want to add Titan to my character or Bodyguard to my character? And so those are kinds of some of those A/B choices that you're making pretty much down the entire experience chart. And then just one extra side note on that: we're a very, very low hit point system. So you're often choosing, like, after every mission, after every other mission, as you get a little bit further along, do I want one more hit point or do I want 2 more skill points? And we really tried to make that bite size so that when you're making those decisions, you're not like, okay, I leveled up, there are now 16 things about my character I need to change, and I've only gotten to play it like 3 times. So we're trying. I
noticed on the character advancement front, you got sort of an XP chart where basically it looks like, as you said, at the end of every mission, you're likely to advance in some way, but not in a huge amount. You get to usually make a choice between 2 different things, depending on what sort of a tier that you're at, like whether you want to get an extra hit point or some skill points, or whether you want to get a stat increase or choose a new ability.
Yeah.
So I like that progression where you get to see your character changing on a regular basis. It's not like a huge level jump or a big wait in between those advancements.
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, you should always have a little bit of tweak. You shouldn't ever get too bored with a vault character. Just always a little something to add or to mess with. Yeah.
So another thing that characters have are abilities. So what are abilities exactly? Say compared to skills or stats or other things.
Very similar to a feat in D&D or something like that. It is a customization on how your character would play. We have sets of groups of abilities, from general to combat to tech to magic, and depending on which classes you pick out in that 2-class setup, that'll kind of set you up for which groups of abilities you can take. So your mage has the personality group and the magic group, and if you want to do things that are social and stuff like that, there's a lot of benefits in those abilities. But yeah, they'll all kind of give you one more tweak of customization into how you want to play that character on missions, on downtime, what your aims are for things. Like, if you want to be the guy that's making magic weapons in the back of his, garage, you're trying to hunt down all these mythic animals and capture pieces, or grab, baubles from ancient mysteries or things like that.
And then how does cybernetics come into play then? Do you buy those with XP, or is that something you would spend money on?
You spend money on them. Their availability is perhaps one of their more important things. You'll want to develop some contacts and some dealers who can get you the really good stuff.
Or build it yourself.
Totally an option. sometimes a more expensive option, sometimes a cheaper option. Kind of depends on how good you are at building it. And then your essence stat, you double that number to determine how many cybernetic points you have to spend. And then you each of those different cyberwares have a cost related to that. So like an arm, every rating of your arm will cost 1 cybernetic point. And like a normal essence for like a starting character would be like 3. So you'd have 6 of those points to spend on these different cybernetics. We did want to get away from, not throwing any shade at Shadowrun, but the 0.002 essence characters. We wanted to not make you need a calculator to figure out whether or not you had died because a vampire hit you or not. Those CPs get spent, and then those are just flat bonuses generally that just get added onto your character. So for example, like a Cyberarm, we'll say its rating plus 3 sets the value of your strength. So if you're an EOS, that arm is like not terribly valuable to you. That's like actually weaker than your like natural strength is. But if you're the little tiny Feyborn fairy, it's great. That's like you've doubled your strength.
Way above, yeah.
just for getting some Cyberarms put on you. And then as you rank them up, like they're pretty good for everybody. But then again, you're kind of trying to figure out where you can find those upgrades. One quick note on this same system of capacity and filling it with different ways to modify things we use in a bunch of different places. So your weapons all have the same system, your armor still has all the same system, your vehicles, your drones, all of that stuff all have these giant menus of different modifications that you can make and have a set number based on the weapon itself as like a balance point for it. Like our basic pistol, the Atlas Defender. Has like 8 cap, so you can like rock it out with like all of the things you could possibly want and build your big RoboCop gun out of this real basic one. And then some of the more advanced things have a much lower cap rating, so you can do a lot less with them, but they started off being really cool in the first place. And yeah, we replicate that system as many places as we can because we love it.
That's fun. I was like options to modify and customize equipment or make your own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Or make stuff your own, I should say.
Yeah, or even change up your ammo. You know you're going to go fight a big plant monster, so you get incendiary ammo or something like that. You know, all those kinds of fun options.
Nice. Well, let's move on to discussing the Kickstarter campaign. The Kickstarter campaign started almost 2 weeks ago. Rocketed up to almost completely funded very quickly, and it seems like it's highly likely to fund. Really close there.
Yeah,
it's sort of in that excruciating stretch of the Kickstarter, kind of in the middle, where it sort of moves along at a crawl usually. But looking forward to it funding and then maybe hitting some stretch goals.
There are so many cool things we want to stuff in this box.
Let's go over the reward tiers first of all, though. So if I want to get my foot in the door with the game at this point, with the early bird stuff being in the past, the option that first gets you rewards is the $35 gets you the digital rule book.
Yeah, Eric, do you want to go through everything that's going to be in that? Because it's a ton.
Yeah. So just like you were saying. Gets our Vault rulebook, everything we need to make, play characters, all that. Our World Shaper, aka GM guide, is built into that book, so no need to purchase a second setup or get anything extra. It's all wrapped up in the one book. It'll also come with all the information you need to make your own tokens at home or print out your own cards and do that kind of thing. And we also have a bunch of digital freebies, which will actually be in every tier, but I'll just mention it here to say that you get some boss boards and some cards and some various useful things to help run games, just as backing the Kickstarter as total freebies. But yeah, and all that stuff packed in the PDF. You get it in digital. Everything you need to run a VTT or anything like that is in this one. Next point up would be the Vault Rulebook tier. You get a physical copy of the book and everything else that was listed in the digital one. Pretty simple bump up there. Everyone likes to have a nice, pretty book on their shelf, though. So we wanted to have that. We love our cover art, so we want to show it off as many places as we can. And from there, we go to the World Shaper box tier. This is the kind of meat of the campaign and what any good World Shaper would want to have for their group. Comes with the book, comes with the quick reference screen we're talking about that can slide the cards into. You get 130 of those cards, from spells to enemies to hacks, and we'll have more and more interesting things too in stretch goals, depending on how those go. And all these chips and tokens, because we're a very tactile game, so we want to have all these dodge tokens in front of players so that they know how many they have, or their fate tokens to help them, get those action hero moments or save from something from disaster, or ensure they get that skill checked off that they really needed. So we have all those tokens and a bunch of measuring tools. Our game is kind of a gridless system, so you need to measure your character movement. We have templates for AoEs and for the flamethrowers and all those kinds of things. And that's all packed in here, along with all the things you previously got. So it has a book, and it has the digitals, and it has the freebies, and all that stuff. And our last tier, kind of our bigger tier, is the Tyrannosaurus tier, is what we called it, because we are TMX Games. We just thought that was cute. And we're super happy with this one. We're really excited because one of the big things is you get to make a sample merc with us. We'll commission the art, so it's all in the style and everything that we want to match. But you get a whole mercenary that will go in all the sample characters that everyone gets at the beginning. And if we hit a stretch goal to get tokens, boy howdy, your character will be one of the tokens that is in the box. You also, of course, get your name in the vault credits. We, as TMX Games, either Richard, Zach, or myself, will run a 6-hour intro game with you. We'll walk you through character creation, make sure you've got that all set up, and do an intro mission. It won't be Kill Bob, it'll be something else we've been cooking up, and it should get you and your table ready to go. And then, like I keep repeating, you get all the freebies, you get a box set of your own, and you get all the digital stuff you need.
Awesome. Do you want to talk about some of your favorite stretch goals as well?
I'll let these guys do that.
Oh,
So Zach and I have a large number of monsters written, and we're really excited to see how many of those we can get into this box. We have to be careful because making sure that we actually deliver to the people who back us is the number one priority. So as those stretch goals give us more manufacturing budget to work with, we get to just cram in so many more of them. What else is really good on the list? There's a few things further down the list that are like really, really exciting. Eric's been working on a browser-based character creator. If we get far enough down along that one, that should really streamline character creation for people.
And it should also let world shapers and players make up monsters on our monster card format so that it can all slot in, or even boss boards. Make your own boss board at home. Get it all set up, because who doesn't love to homebrew a bunch? I know Zach and I are big homebrewers, so we like to have that mechanic in there.
That sounds really cool. I know Lancer's a CompCon sort of browser tool. I don't know if you've ever checked out their stuff.
Very cool.
Super cool. Very, very useful. Awesome. So as far as the Kickstarter, that's going to be ending in 19 days at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it
Sounds right.
Mm-hmm. Something like that. A little over 2 weeks. So once that's done, how long is it going to be before you expect to fulfill and release the game?
Those are somewhat different answers. For the people interested, we're going to be doing a beta read probably 2 or 3 months after completion of the Kickstarter. Then after we process all of that, the PDF will go out to the backers and to the printer at the same time. So everyone, while we're waiting for it to get actually made and then come back across the ocean, will already have the digital version of the game with all of those things ready to play. And then we are planning on it actually getting in people's hands physically in December.
Cool.
The world could do anything, so as long as we don't start a war with China. should be fine on that front. But
yeah, knock on wood there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, shipping's been a big pain for Kickstarter fulfillment for a lot of Kickstarters.
Yeah.
Are you planning on attending any conventions this year to show off the game?
We are. We're already planning on being at, although we didn't get any good table slots for Genghis Khan. We might still try to sneak in if something opens up. That's here in Denver, where we're all based out of. And then we work with Indie Game Alliance. Hopefully they'll have access to our product a month or two after it's gotten delivered to all the backers. So that should be a place where it can get picked up. And then we haven't built the schedule out yet, mostly because we've been so focused on getting this Kickstarter ready. But I want to start going to as many things as I can possibly get to. So
if you see him in a T-Rex costume, just say hi. I will make 2 promises for him.
It could happen.
Awesome. As we wrap things up and move on to the Q&A section of the episode, was there anything that we didn't really get to that you wanted to make sure we talk about?
No, I think you nailed a bunch of things. Excited for questions.
Yeah, it felt pretty thorough. So, I want to encourage anyone in the chat to throw questions out there. I know I saw one earlier from Darren. I'm going to scroll up to that one. I'm not seeing it now. Oh, here we go. This question is for you all. Does the game hold anyone responsible for the outcome of the job? I.e., does the GM keep track somewhere in the background? Or is part of the fun of the system is that it's hand-waved away? I'm assuming that's referring to back when I was asking whether or not mercenaries are legal on the job.
True to form, we do a 5-star rating at the end of the mission to determine how well you succeeded on the mission. And both to be very tongue-in-cheek with the gig work theme, we're also really wanting to use this as an opportunity to open up a conversation between the players and the world shapers to talk about what they really enjoyed about the game, what they found frustrating, or what they didn't like about that particular session or the game system as a whole, and then use that as an opportunity to help game masters and players just have a continually better game as they play through. But that's also the point at which XP gets given out.
Well, hold on 1 second, Richard. To answer the question that was asked about what happens post mission is that, yes, there is a little bit of hand waving in terms of the legality of what you're doing, but that there will be NPCs that might come after you, and we have a mechanic system, and that can happen in downtime. Make sure that you keep your friends close.
I imagine that you don't have to worry so much about the corporate security getting called on you to answer for your crimes, but if you anger someone enough who has some resources, I imagine you might have some jobs popping up in the vault for someone to come deal with you as a consequence.
Yes.
Contacts have a rating, which most people think of as something that can go positive. It is also very, very likely certain contacts that you will develop will go negative, and as they go negative, more and more of their life will become devoted to destroying you. So it's a way for the game master to kind of track that, even if the players don't know exactly what's going on.
Yes, I like how the sort of there's the XP / star system wrap up sort of focuses on collaborative storytelling, as Darren was pointing out in the chat, and a lot of the focus is on whether or not people had fun. So I think that's probably the most important factor for any role-playing game or game experience, is that you're doing it for fun. So it's good to have an option to sort of touch base on that.
Mm-hmm.
I could imagine someone being particularly if they were particularly annoyed with how someone didn't follow through with the teamwork or whatever, saying, no, I didn't have fun. We all get less experience points. Next time, follow the plan. You wasted my ability.
We don't expect it to affect experience that way, but we do hope that, like, if someone is frustrated because someone said that they were going to do something and then decided that they, saw a squirrel, that, like, it gets mentioned, and then, like, maybe they have a conversation about it over dinner that night. But, like, without there being any real effort to open up that conversation, I've been at enough tables where someone was like, God, I just wish they would have done the thing they said they were going to do. And then since they never said it out loud, the other person just went on about their life, never even knowing. So we're just trying to get that opened up a little bit.
Yeah, when you're playing the game, it's real easy to sort of just get lost in focusing on the sort of in-character aspect of the play. But it's nice to have a reminder to sort of step back from a meta point of view to, just talk about the game with the people you're playing with.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see any other questions coming through here, and we've been at this for a little over an hour now. So
yeah,
I think we'll wrap this up. But I just wanted to mention that if you wanted to see Vault played, or listen to Vault being played, actually, because it's going to be an audio podcast. We're going to be playing it this Monday. I hope to get it out and released by Wednesday of this upcoming week or shortly thereafter. So keep an eye out for that on the Arcology podcast feed. So if you're subscribed on our podcast feed, you don't have to do anything special to find it. It'll just pop up and you can download it and listen to it there. Definitely looking forward to playing with that. We have some people from our regular actual play crew playing. Opti is going to be one of the players, and not sure who's going to be playing what. I think all the character options look fun to me. So
thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being on here. It's fun to talk about role-playing games with people who come up with them and design them, and you've got some really neat ideas and rule innovations, and the component concept I think is really fun too, with using the cards and the tokens to track things. So like I said, I'm really looking forward to trying out the game on Monday with you, and just wanted to thank you again for joining me today. It's been fun. And wish you luck on your Kickstarter. May you break through that funding barrier that you're oh so close to, and hit a bunch of those stretch goals.
Yeah,
awesome.
We're so close. We're just so close.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun to watch the numbers go up so fast in like the first day or two, and then like after that, it's like just a little bit more and a little bit more. I remember pretty much went about the same with the Misspent Youth Kickstarter we did last year. So I know how it feels, but it'll pick up. And I have full confidence that you'll fund, no problems. It's just a matter of how many stretch goals you're going to get to. So hopefully a bunch. So good luck with that. And I'll be keeping an eye on that. Richard, I'll see you on Monday.
Yeah.
And with that, you've been listening to the Arcology Podcast. You can support the show as a patron on the Arcology Podcast Patreon. Just want to talk a little bit about that. At the $2 level, gives you access to exclusive actual play series available as direct download or through a private podcast feed. We've got a number of different campaigns already up there and completed for you to listen to, and one that's in progress. There's the Lone Star campaign, Pirates campaign, Black Star Neo-Anarchist campaign, and the current one, Lost Vegas, ghouls surviving in Las Vegas using Shadowrun Anarchy rules, GM'd by Carlton. It's a lot of fun. All that's on there for you to download, hundreds of hours of content. And at the $5 level, you can sit in on our actual play recording sessions. We've got a few people who do that. It's always fun to see them and interact in the text chat, though we don't give them mic powers because we're recording it for the podcast. But again, patreon.com/Arcology Podcast. Please consider supporting the show on there. And please check out the Vault Kickstarter and back that if you haven't already. Looks like it's a lot of fun. And I'm definitely looking forward to playing it. And also, if you're not following the Subversion Kickstarter campaign, please do that. Costs you nothing to follow that, and will hopefully tempt you into supporting down the road. But with that, I'll say goodbye and sign off, and thank you so much for joining us today.